Hello and welcome to the Kilowatt Half Hour, your weekly roundup about the world of electric cars, brought to you by the team at electrifying.com. This week, we will be discussing the merits of reviewing cars whilst slightly tipsy. Plus, we'll be answering your electric car questions and dipping into the postbag. Welcome, I'm Ginny.
I'm Nicola.
And I'm Mike.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Okay, Nicola, we've missed you. Where have you been?
I've been everywhere. It's been a very, very busy couple of months, but I'm at home. So I've just decided to come and join you guys this week. I may even join in next week. How are you doing?
Super. I'm jolly good. Yes, we've missed you on the podcast, but you have been all over the place doing lots of different things. Not least, I think we need to turn to the topic that I just mentioned, reviewing electric cars while slightly tipsy.
Right. Can I? Right.
Yeah, go. No.
Allow me to explain.
Yep.
Okay. Any car journo will understand what I'm saying. This is a very niche thing, but you go to a Fiat launch and it's chaos, right? It's always chaos. I've been to a few where you go to the Fiat factory, which is such a cool place, by the way. It's where they filmed the Italian Job with the minis on the roof. They've got that rooftop track and it's got so much history behind it. And they were celebrating 125 years of Fiat. Big event, and there was loads of us journos that all turned up together. There was 200 people at this event. 200 people all stood on the roof, and there were only 3 cars. So, as is tradition, I had to get my elbows out to try and get some time with the car. But by that point, I had a couple of glasses of champagne because it was so busy and you just couldn't get in there. And by the time the presentation was done and it was a whole thing, and then they just started bringing out the champers, and I was like, I might as well have it. It's not like I'm driving. I'm just walking around this car. It's fine. So, and it was 32 degrees. I needed to stay hydrated. So I had a couple of glasses, and then we managed to get some time with the car. So I filmed the whole thing.
And being Italy, there was no water. It was just champagne. Just that was the only thing. It's the only thing they had to rehydrate you with champagne.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can agree though, can't we, Mike, that Fiat launches they're a special kind of thing all of their own, aren't they?
They are. I mean, you and I have done quite a few now, and they don't seem to change at all. There's some odd. I mean, the Lingotto factory we were talking about was the old Fiat factory. That's in Turin, and there's a perfectly usable airport in Turin. But for some reason, you always fly to Milan when you're doing a Fiat launch, and then involves a minibus for about 3 hours to Turin. It's like the Agnelli family had a deal with the minibus manufacturers that every future launch they ever did had to involve a minibus somewhere, because you do spend the thick end of 6 hours in 2 days in the back of a minibus.
And it's normally very hot as well.
Yes.
Very hot.
We spent the entire day traveling. So, you're up at 5 o'clock in the morning to then jump on a flight, to then land in Italy, to then sit in a minibus for ages. And we didn't actually get to the hotel until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So I've just spent 12 hours, 11 hours, time difference, but same. I've just spent that amount of time just traveling. Whereas there is an airport that flies to Gatwick, can I just say? It's only 25 minutes from my house. But Turin only flies to Gatwick. So they decide to choose Milan because it's easier for people that live closer to Heathrow, which doesn't make any sense. But here we are.
Anyway, these are, I hasten to our journalist moans. We shouldn't be moaning at all, but there is just something wonderfully chaotic about Fiat launches. They're always wonderful. We love the cars. We love the Panda as well. I mean, you really liked it, but there's a kind of a slight chaos and hecticness about anything involving Fiat, which we're very fond of, but we're not so fond of the minibus drives that go on forever. But the car itself, you like the Panda, it's good, isn't it? We love it.
It's lovely. But I mean, I was always a fan of the original Panda anyway, so I've always just kind of it's a quirky little thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I've always kind of liked it. And as soon as they, nodded that they were going to turn it electric, you always start getting slightly worried. I mean, we've seen what's happened with Ford and all of their names, but they've kept it very pandery, and it's a really lovely nod to the original Panda. And I love the curly cable that comes out of the front. I think that's brilliant. I mean, why is that not a thing everywhere else? It's such a good idea. It's so simple.
Because, Nicola Hume, we discussed this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, Mike? And my point was about the curly cable, which I agree, lovely gimmick. So if you haven't seen this, go and check it out. Nicola's video is here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on your podcast streaming service, head over to electrifying.com and look at the Panda video. It's a brilliant video. She was slightly tipsy when she did it, and she's absolutely fantastic. And she was elbowing people out of the way, left, right and centre. But it's got the traditional charging port at the back of the car, and at the front of the car it's got a curly cable with a connector on the end, and it kind of winds back into the car. And I really like the idea, but the thing that Mike and I we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, weren't we? It reminds me of a slinky, and we all know what happens to slinkies. Slinkies over time, they just get stretched and you can never get them back together. And that's my worry, is that somebody will pull the cable out so much you'll never be able to get it back into the front of the car.
I mean, yes and no. You're not going to throw the Panda down the stairs, are you, like a slinky? And it's not as mega tight as a slinky. And you're not going to, like the old landline phone cables.
Yes, like that.
You're not going to twiddle it with your fingers or anything like that. You're just going to take it out and plug it in and put it back in the car. I think it'll be totally fine.
Okay.
And I hate to contradict Fiat's PR machine, but I had a Twizy and it had the same thing. It had a curly cable and a plug on the end of it. But
of course it does.
I guess their get out might be saying it wasn't a car. So that in theory, technically, they're correct by saying it's the first electric car to have the curly cable. But yeah.
Of course, because the Twizy is a quadricycle.
Heavy quadricycle.
But why didn't it take off after the Twizy?
I don't know. It was never long enough. I had to use an extension cable because it wasn't as long as a Type 2. A normal Type 2 cable was 3 or 4 meters.
Yeah.
Whereas this thing kept, certainly in winter, it would spring back and just whack the car because it was just like, it was honestly, if you lost your grip on this thing, it would just ping like a tape measure, when you wind a tape measure back in. But,
so my theory of not being able to get the curly cable all back in and having bits of cable everywhere, that's not a thing, is it, in your experience with the Twizy, Mike? It just retracted nicely.
No, it didn't. It always needs some sort of, 2 hands to force the cover shut on it. So I mean, it was okay. Maybe Fiat are using a different grade of curly. I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, just to make this clear to you, please do go and check it out. Then you fully understand what we're talking about. But yes, we do like the Panda very much. What have we been driving, Mike? What have you been driving recently? Anything exciting?
I'm giddy with the excitement on this one. It is. No. I have a Q8. No, I'm not. It was a Q8. A Q8 e-tron Sportback 55, I think is the final name for it. And it's you went on the launch of this, UK launch of this, didn't you, Nicola?
I didn't go on the launch. But I got to. It was one of the first videos I did for Electrifying.
Yeah,
actually,
it was. Yeah,
we had one for a while. Yeah,
it's an interesting. If you've got given it, you think this is a lovely car. It's very nice. And I always slightly shocked when I look at how much these things are when you kind of get the build sheet for them, because you kind of know roughly an e-tron is from 73,000 pounds. This one is the black edition, so which, as far as I can make out, is mostly trim. The actual list price for it is £101,135.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
And it's it's nicely made. That is twice as much as a Tesla Model Y long range, which Audi would be horrified to be compared with those two. But in terms of space and performance, the Model Y is quicker and has got more space in it. I don't sound like I'm knocking this car, but I noticed a couple of weeks ago, Audi said that they're going to sort of shutter production of the Q8 at their Brussels factory because of lack of demand. And you kind of think the two things kind of slightly go together. It does feel like a car we were discussing the other how quickly the electric car market's evolving. And it already feels quite an old car. There's it was built on a shared platform. It's a combustion platform. So you've still got the big transmission tunnel in the back. It's quite tight on space because it's sort of that floor pan is basically designed to have an engine at the front of it. So I mean, it was kind of
transmission tunnel feels so dated now, doesn't it? Yeah. It really does.
It really does. And people pick up on when someone says, "Oh, Audi are stopping making this car due to a lack of demand or lack of sales," and you kind of think, well, that's electric cars in general, lack of demand, lack of sales. And you kind of think, well, this just is, unless you get a whacking, allowance on your company car, allowance, then you might choose one, and the company had a deal with Volkswagen or Audi Group, whatever, you might choose it. But it did seem an awful lot of money. And I went quickly onto a well-known used car website, and I found that you can get one for 500 with 500 miles on it. So dealer demonstrator, probably exactly the same spec as I had, 68,000. So that's already £32,000. And that was that's a 3-month-old car. So
you could buy a Kia EV3 with that, and with just the money you're losing. Oh my goodness!
For the sake of 500 miles.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So
no.
I mean, everyone, nobody buys. You're lunatic if you're buying things with cash, aren't you? I mean, I'm the only person who buys cars with cash, but it's and you buy it monthly, and you can, and I guess you think, well, it's £200 more than a Tesla is, but and I guess you kind of lose it in that, especially if it's a company car. But I don't know.
That's quite.
Do you have the one with the terrible digital mirrors?
No, it doesn't have the digital mirrors. No,
but
I, we were talking about how quick times change. It had that virtual cockpit, and I went on the launch of the original e-tron, and I remember it had that first. It was the first sort of Volkswagen Group product to have that kind of digital display, digital cockpit. So you could have a map, you could choose, you could have a map, you could have a picture of the graphics, all this kind of stuff.
Felt space age, didn't it?
I drove a Fabia last week with one. This is it's how quick the technology kind of filters down. And if you can't buy a Fabia with normal dials anymore, it all has these digital cockpit and everything now, because I guess it gets to the point where it's cheaper for manufacturers to put those in than it is dials and binnacles and all that kind of stuff. So yes, a nice car, but feels a little bit old and rather expensive.
Well, let's go from one end of the scale to the other end of the scale, Nicola, because you've been driving the Peugeot 308 SW, haven't you? That I had for a little bit. Nikki had it for a while. I had it for a week or so, and then you've been in it for quite a bit recently. How are you finding that?
Sorry, can you give it the correct title?
Sorry. Oh, Longboi.
Thank you.
Oh,
sorry.
No.
I'm driving the Longboi.
Apologies to anybody from Peugeot who might be listening to this, who
have
thought about the branding on their car and have decided it's a lovely name, the 308 SW, but for future purposes, it will henceforth be known as the Peugeot 308 Longboi.
Thank you.
That's BOI
Mason,
as
who's
well,
head
isn't
of
it?
PR for Peugeot, sends me messages all the time. Whenever I post on my Instagram going, taking my Longboys, who are my sausage dog, out for a trip in the Longboy. And he's like, please stop calling it a Longboy.
So if you're listening, Mason, and I do happen to know that he does listen to the Kilowatt Half Hour, all I can do is apologise on Nicola's behalf, and I will have a word with her and see if we can do something about this. But I don't think we're going to be able to do it. It is a Longboi. It's
Longboys for life.
Longboys for life. Yeah.
I am really enjoying it. I really am. Do you know what? I mean, I love a Longboi. I've always loved a Longboi anyway. Like, I love an estate car. I think they're cracking cars. And I know it's got a massive boot, but every time I go shopping and I fill up the boot, I'm like, oh my God, I can buy so much more stuff. And it drives really nice. And I've really got used to the small steering wheel. I mean, we've all driven the newer Peugeots with the small, low steering wheel. But because I've now been driving it for well over a month, I've done a lot of miles in that thing over to Silverstone and Goodwood and, all the places. Now, every time I sit in a different car, I feel like the steering wheels are like the size of an old bin lid. It feels really weird.
It does feel like that. It's funny because Peugeot steering wheels really divide opinion, don't they?
Yeah.
And I've had I had a 208, my own E208 that I ran for 18 months or so. I had it for a couple of years, and I just got so used to it. It doesn't bother me at all. But I know if you just get in it and have one, then they just feels a bit like, oh, what's this? It's a funny shape and it's small. Yeah. But actually, when you live with them for a while, I really like it.
Yeah.
But I know that some people will just absolutely not like them. But I personally, I like the flat bottom. And I agree with that car. I think it looks really nice as well.
It's a very sexy car, and I do have to give a nod to the lovely Mike, who just raised his hand, of people that don't like the steering and the driving position. But I would say that for those of the taller variety, a Peugeot is not for you. I think if you're kind of under, I don't know, 5'9" and under, I think you're pretty happy with a Peugeot, but everyone of the taller variety,
I think
maybe not so
I
much.
think you're writing off quite a lot of the car buying public there with statement. I think. Do you struggle with it, Mike? Because
I do struggle with it, all joking aside, because I need quite a bit of clearance for my knees because they're usually,
right.
quite high. So I've got to get the steering wheel quite high to clear my legs. And it's all very well saying, well, you push the seat back, but then you're miles away from the steering wheel and everything else. So I never really have the seat all the way back. So it's always slightly forward. But to clear my
I'm
knees, I have to have
wondering
the
if
steering wheel up quite high, which means it obliterates all
It
the.
blocks.
I
Okay.
completely understand, and I am, I'm 6'5". I'm an outlier in terms of, getting, and I kind of admire the concept of it, smaller steering wheels and bits and pieces. But it's, physically, it just doesn't. I can't see
Doesn't
the
work for you.
information that I
I
need
wonder
to.
if we should do like a little YouTube short video of best cars for tall people.
I
Do you
think
know,
that's
Mike
fantastic.
can rattle off his
Exactly.
list of favourite cars for people your height.
that is a really good idea. If you're
Yeah.
listening and you are approaching Mike's height, Mike, as we affectionately call our human ruler,
Yeah.
of 6'5", and you struggle with cars, let us know in the comments below, or you can drop us an email to a podcast@electrifying.com. So if there are cars that either you've struggled with or cars that really work for you size-wise, and then maybe we'll do a video which is a roundup of the best electric cars for tall people.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a market for that. I don't know, Mike. What do you
I
reckon?
reckon there is.
But my BMW i3 is just perfect. Generally speaking, anything that's sort of German, I remember years and years ago, I went to go and see, we were doing a development drive thing for Audi, and they said they designed their cars for, I think, the 98th percentile, whereas the rest of the industry do 95% percentile. So at 6'5", I'm between, and that means the sort of odd percentage of the population. So
Yeah.
being my height, I am sort of 97, 98%. Yeah, generally speaking, people don't make stuff from my size, but the Germans did. So that's why I've always, generally speaking, got the sort of the leg, steering wheel, pedals arrangement kind of fine. And the i3 is great. I mean, you can have the steering wheel out so far on the i3. I almost have it like, Francois Delacour, the rally driver, which is, 4 inches away from my chest. It's great. I love it. It's got getting into a comfy old pair of slippers when I get into the i3, and the Ionic's nowhere near as comfortable as the i3 is. So yeah, you can stop the search now. It's the BMW i3 is the most comfortable. So.
Okay, that's your default. Like Tom's default is the Leaf, mine's a Skoda Enyaq.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
default is the BMW
Yeah.
i3. Nicola, what's your default car? Have you got, like me with my Enyaq?
I don't really have one.
Okay,
don't really have one.
You're not in default mode yet.
I'm not in default mode.
Okay, let's stick with the States for a bit, because we had we've had a great comment in actually from World of Cars LDN, which I think is World of Cars London. Love the podcast, guys. Always look forward to the weekly episode notification. Thank you very much. Here's the question. Can anyone give me an answer to what seems like an obvious question, which no one that I've seen has asked? Why has Audi not produced an estate Avant version of the e-tron? Why did Porsche get the okay to do both a saloon and estate with the Taycan, but not Audi, who are arguably the estate masters? Isn't that a good observation? Because they are so much, obviously, hot, fast, rapid Audi estate is the stuff that dreams are made of. And I absolutely love the Taycan Cross Turismo. It is just such a thing of beauty. But why wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be just wonderful to see an Audi e-tron GT with...
Surely it's in the pipeline. Surely.
I haven't heard any rumours at all about that. Have you, Mike?
No,
Nothing.
I don't think so. I think it's largely down to the fact that Taycan does the volume, and maybe they thought, well, if e-tron was doing the numbers that the Taycan does, there may be a case for doing it. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that Taycan does outsell e-tron GT. So
I mean, for the price, for what we're looking at for the Audi that you're driving at the moment, the price of whatever they're going to try and charge for an estate, and then they're going to be ending up head to head with a Taycan, you'd choose a Taycan any day, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
You just would.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good point though.
It was a good, interesting observation, actually. And it's not even like something that we've kind of heard on the rumour mill or on launches. Often they'll drop, you might get to see sort of sneak previews of things that are coming quite a lot, or we'll talk about things that are coming down the line. But I've not even heard that being discussed. But it does seem such an obvious, doesn't it? That, I think it was just Porsche they got the nod and Audi didn't. Should we move on to some more of our sort of comments and questions from our dear listeners? What do you reckon?
I'm going to go full millennial and read it from my phone because
Okay.
that's what I do.
Okay.
This is annoying things about a car. This is from the US average guy.
Oh,
Us average guy.
US
What
average.
bothers me about
Maybe he's an average guy in the US.
maybe unless I don't know. It's kind of all one word, so it could be USA, the rage guy. I don't know. You never know. So what bothers me about my car? My 2019 Chevy Bolt turns the radio on every time I start it.
That's so annoying.
Why is that
Isn't it?
annoying?
Because it really irritates me. I hate cars that do that. There's quite a lot that the minute you get in, it puts the radio on straight away. Or it thinks to CarPlay and like starts randomly playing stuff. I don't want it to put the radio on every time I get in. I want to choose it.
Why? No, I'd rather it be on.
Exactly.
No, it irritates me. I'm with Mr. USA. Mr.
Mike,
Chevy
where are you
Bolt.
standing here, please?
I don't mind it. I mean, at the Volkswagen one, it's already playing the radio as you open the door. Have you noticed that? Because
I know, it irritates me.
I mean,
Really irritates me.
Ioniq takes forever to wake up. It's like me. I'm halfway down the road before it's worked out that it still wants to be connected to things. So it's it's the opposite problem. But so maybe that's why it doesn't bother me quite so much. But obviously we don't get the Chevy Bolt in the UK, so we can't really comment on that. But I know the Volkswagen ones. I remember thinking, somebody talking in the car, and I realised opened the door, and the radio was already going. Yeah.
No, that's my pet hate is when I get in the car and it suddenly the radio comes on really loudly, because the night before I was driving home and I was quite in a happy mood and had the radio and the music on really loudly, and then I get off and I go to bed.
You had it loud.
It's what? Sorry?
It's not the car's fault that you had it up loud, is it?
Exactly. You can't blame the car. You just need to blame past Ginny.
I'm not blaming the car. Well, I am blaming the car because how I was the night before is not necessarily what I want on at 6 o'clock in the morning when I'm bleary-eyed and struggling to get into the car and heading off for a long drive to somewhere to go to work. I don't then suddenly want the radio on blasting.
Oh, I do. No, I totally do. I want it nice and loud. Go on.
No, I'm not having this. I'm completely with
you,
US average guy on YouTube who yes, it bothers me too. I really feel your pain. He had another thing that you got another thing that bothered. Go on. What's that one? Oh, right. Okay.
So this is an interesting one for Mike, actually. So my 2024 Hyundai Ioniq 5 will not activate the brake lights with aggressive regen if I slightly touch the accelerator pedal to reduce the regen. The same circumstances do not affect brake lights on my Bolt, ignoring the Bolt bit. But his lights should be turning on, right? The lights turn on your Ioniq 5.
They do, yeah. I mean, I feel like as soon as I've lifted off the throttle a tiny bit, all the kind of, if you look behind you, the cat's eyes are all lit up red at night, that kind of thing. So I think mine does that. But because he says if I slightly touch the accelerator pedal to reduce the regen, well, you can set the regen level on the Ioniq 5 anyway. I have mine on auto.
He's not a fan of the flappy paddles.
Well, I don't use the flappy paddle, but you can have it on auto, so it kind of works out. If there's a car in front of you, it's a bit more kind of punchy on the regen and going downhill in bits and pieces. So, I mean, I don't know. Mine doesn't. I don't think mine does that. But what I would say to US average guys, try setting it in auto. I think you have to pull both the flappy paddles at the same time, and it puts it into auto regen.
He doesn't like them.
He does like
it's
the normal regen.
Just get over your fear of the flappy paddles and your dislike.
Don't worry about the brake lights. It's only brake lights, isn't it? So you don't get to see them. Don't worry about it. Concentrate on what's in front of you.
Okie doke.
Right, there's another comment that I have to read, which I just think is bloody magnificent. This is from Mark Bennett, 6658, who says, it's probably just me, but it looks a bit like Ginny is podcasting in the buff. An optical illusion with her long hair, bare shoulders, and the big microphone, etc., no doubt. Laughy face. Were you naked last week, Ginny?
Yeah, we all were. Did you not?
Do you know what? I wasn't obviously doing that but I was wearing a vest top because it was really hot. So yes, I would have. Yes, the straps would have been. This is going to be really hard for you if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening to this.
I think they will now.
But yeah, I was wearing. You don't
It's going to
mind?
get hits on YouTube now.
Yeah, we're watching now.
I was wearing a vest top, and the hair may have sort of just disguised the straps on the vest top. But I can assure you, I was not in the buff on last week's podcast. I was fully dressed.
Okay.
Yes, 100%, definitely. What are you laughing at?
That's a shame.
At least I think I was. I mean, I'm hoping. God, Mike, sorry if I forgot to put my top on last week. I'm really sorry.
Oh, and Finch 7651 who says, "Hi, patchy wall," because yes, that patch on your wall has been there since time began.
Oh, there's another one there. I didn't notice the one at the bottom of that one. The chip shop curry one. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
With my dated pine. Life is busy. There are too many cars to review. There's that, you know, it's busy. I do want to do it. It might have to
Hurry up and sort it.
I'll get it sorted. I'll surprise you all one day. It'll all look fabulous. Okie doke. Right, what else? What else are we doing? Should we chat about voice activation?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Should I do that? I'll go on to voice activations because we were talking, Nick, on the podcast last week about just how voice activation can be so hit and miss. And actually, you really like the voice activation, I know, in the Dolphin, in the BYD Dolphin. It really works, good. Doesn't it? Yeah.
And she's really polite and she reminds you that there's windows open and she's lovely. She understands every word you say. She's fabulous. Really like her.
It's a thing. I remember driving the BYD Seal and getting, you know, pleasantly surprised at how efficient the voice activation was. It's not a common theme, though, efficiency of voice activation. So we had Kevin Reed Miller, who left us a message saying, on the question of voice assistants, I have a Polestar 2, which I love, great car. And Hey Google and Hey Siri work flawlessly on the Google Automotive software. Also, a short press on the dedicated steering wheel button activates Google Assistance, and a long press activates Siri for Apple CarPlay. So I always have a choice. Perfect. Thanks for the great show. I think it was because in the Scenic, I was finding it difficult that if you override the car's voice activation system, once you're plugged into CarPlay overrides it.
Right, I see. So you can only then talk to Siri.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Anyway, Trevor Healy 1045 has just proved that it's just me doing something incorrect. I use voice commands on my Megane E-Tech and it works really well. The only thing I wish it did was to control more functions, e.g. lower the windows. Oh yes, and I wish I did not have to say, hey Google. So maybe I just need to shout, hey, Google a bit more and try and see if they'll listen to me. I don't know.
Yeah, but you should say it louder. But the problem is your music's on so loud in the morning.
I'll turn the radio on and I'm really grumpy. Ryan Henry 1288, regarding voice recognition, my Leaf has it well sorted. Short press on the button to speak to the vehicle, long press for Google Assistant on Android Auto. Our other car, a Tesla, has near on useless voice recognition. It's a major gripe we have with Tesla.
It's fine. That's it.
Yeah, I think it isn't great actually from memory on the Tesla. And of course, you can't ever sync anything, can you, in a Tesla?
No,
that's another thing.
We can test it because we're driving one again just at the start of August.
Yeah, we're getting some interesting cars in actually. That should be a good video, and we will talk about that on a future podcast. But we're looking at the electric cars with the longest range.
So we'll test the voice activation.
We'll have a look at that. Bernard Hilton, a 3527. I bought a Kona in March. Only problems I have had are stupid speed and attention warning bongs. The real tailgate bongs. I'm sure the bongs wake up the neighbours when I go out early in the morning. But eat your heart out, Volvo. It's a nice, too small car. Shame about the software. And
it's a great car.
Very happy with his Kona instead. And this is a really interesting one, Mike, isn't it? Because the bings and the bongs is something we talk about a lot. Because they are annoying, but they're on there for a legal reason. And sometimes in videos, we've found ourselves saying, oh, this is how you turn it off. You go into this menu. And we've talked about it, as a group and said, we shouldn't really be telling people how to turn them off. There's been a couple of people messaging saying, can you tell us how to turn the bings and the bongs off? It's really hard. I don't know. It's one we've agonised over, I think it's fair to say, isn't it, Mike?
It is. I'm sure there's more bings and bongs that are actually required, though, because, the Ioniq 5's binging and bonging the moment you get in, and you can turn the sort of chimes off every now and then, but they always seem to come back with a software update. I just think there's ways and means of doing it. If it's doing it to the point where you drives you mad and switch it off, then it's kind of not doing its job properly, is it? I mean, there must be a
Yeah.
better way of doing things than. I mean, it may. I don't know the specifics of it under the sort of NCAT rules whether it does have to make an audible thing, whether
Yeah, it
a
does. Could it just
vibration
be a
or
visual?
could it
Yeah.
be a visual thing? I don't know. If it irritates you to the point where you're turning it off, I'd argue that's probably not a very good system. And I think that's going to be part of the
Yeah.
NCAP thing, isn't it? Is the fact that it's got to be an acceptable
And I
alert.
think if people are asking how to turn them off, I think it is handy to know. So like the Dacia Spring, for example, which I drove a couple of weeks ago, it's a physical button. And you just press it twice and it turns everything off. It's blooming marvellous.
Yeah.
But to be fair, the bing bongs weren't that irritating, so you're probably not going to turn it off anyway. But I think if people are asking, then I think we should kind of go, by the way, if you do want to, we recommend you don't, but if you do want to, this is how you switch it off.
We have wondered about that. I know, for example, Korean made and Chinese cars tend to have more of those warnings on. They are much more warning packed. I know BMWs, for example, also have just a simple button like the Dacia Spring, which is on the steering wheel, and that turns everything off if you need it to. But again, when I've had lots of BMWs over a period of time, I've never actually felt irritated by it because it seems to be calibrated to the point where actually, that's just quite useful. Thank you. I've gone a bit over the speed limit.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree that some of the bings and bongs are ridiculous. And I know you had a case, Nick, recently, didn't you, where
in the Dolphin,
where it was recognising a sign that was for horses. Was that right?
So down a country road where I live, it's a 60-mile-an-hour road, but there's a sign that says, if you see a horse, slow down to 10 mile an hour. And it was registering it as a 10-mile-an-hour road when it's a 60-mile-an-hour road. And then it was just constantly bonging and I was getting really annoyed by it. However, BYD have done a major update.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I'm a bit annoyed that I handed back the car when I did because the latest software update, the bongs are like minute, hardly there at all. And it seems like the range is better. Everything all seems to be working much better. I was at the Goodwood Ball with BYD and I was sat with Kate and everyone and I was going, she was going, I'm so sorry that you had the car when you did. And I was like, I can't believe the timing of literally the day I handed the car back was the day that there was a major software update. And now I'm like, that's really annoying.
And I think that this is another example of why BYD, my money is on them out of all those brands that are coming out of China to actually succeed, because they really listen to the market.
They listen, yes.
So I think in the home market, it's quite acceptable to have the level of noises that they're on the car. In Europe, it jars a bit, just as it jarred having Build Your Dreams across the back of the car. Yeah. And they literally just had a conversation and went, okay, well, they're not really liking that in Europe. Oh, let's just take it off the back. That'll be fine, no problems. And they've done the same with toning down all the alerts on the car. They're still there. It's still got all the safety stuff you need. Yeah. But I just think you imagine, I mean, somebody like a VW doing that, Mike, they'd have to have meetings for 3 years to make a decision to do that, wouldn't they? Whereas I think BYD, they just really listen and they adapt. And I think that's why, for me, I think they are going to be one who's going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was my 2 pence on that.
Oh, it's also wireless CarPlay and Android Auto now, by the way, in the Dolphin, which is another thing that I was like, I just missed out on it.
So we were talking about being giddy with excitement last week, Nicola, about cars that are coming.
Was Mike giddy?
No.
What do you think?
I mean, as I'm looking at Mike right now, that's his giddy face. The face just doesn't move. But that's his giddy face. I can tell he's really giddy with excitement right now.
You got giddy-ish? No, not really. No.
There are very few things that get me giddy with cars, but I mean, admittedly, we were talking about Renault 4s and big Hyundais last week, so I kind of missed the giddiness of it. But anyway,
we did have a few people who were giddy with excitement about things. Mika Davis 660, who is a regular, I think, to the podcast. Whilst I've spent recent years getting excited. Giddy with excitement, but I'm definitely excited about new EVs coming to the market. The only real giddy feelings are definitely for cars like the Dacia Spring that are below £20,000. Real affordability is so needed. Completely agree. We've all been very giddy with excitement over the Spring, haven't we?
It's a brilliant little thing. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, for what you're getting for your money and the way it drives, because I remember the first time I sat in one, I was like, this steering's really loose and just terrible. But then they listened and they've changed all of it. And now it drives really well. And I think it's going to do really well. I really do.
Yeah. It's a great little thing. Who else was giddy with excitement? We have Paul Meyer. Hello, Paul, who sent us a comment on YouTube. Giddy, I long for a really fast, tight-handling Alpha, a bit faster than the Junior Veloce. That would make him giddy. Steve Jordan, 1409, said he'd be giddy with excitement when the patch on my wall is painted. It's going to take you a while to get giddy with excitement about that, Steve. Sorry. And we had loads of, one of the cars we were talking about that was getting us giddy with excitement was that lovely Cyberster Coupe. So we had loads of comments in about that, didn't we, Nick?
Yeah, let's have a little look here. So, I mean, everyone's gone bananas over the Cyberster, haven't they? So this is DeWarmsea? DeWarmk? Maybe? Yeah. I don't know. Who says, well, that MG Cyberster Coupe will put to bed any thoughts BMW had about releasing a Z, 4, 3, whatever they're going to do, and the ongoing concerns getting bigger when it comes to legacy brands being late to join the party. Yeah, it's interesting that.
Yeah.
Why can't they do it? That's why I don't understand about the Ford Capri, but that's a conversation for another time. We've ranted about the Ford Capri way too much.
We probably need to just go, put the Ford Capri to bed for a while. I feel like we've spent about 16 podcasts talking about that car.
I mean, yes, but literally this next comment is about the Capri. So the Urban Strencan, who says the MG Cyberster GTS is just perfection. If it goes on sale in it will be my next EV. Just love it. This is my kind of EV. Ford should use its Capri name for Sports 2+2 EV Coupe.
True.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you've got Neil ETA6859 saw the MG at Goodwood. The one on the MG stand did have blackout windows, but in the first look area down by the start line of the hill climb, they had another in green, but it had full visible light grey interior. Yeah, that legroom you wanted. You're not going to like it, but it does look great.
It does look great. Who cares about legroom when it looks that great?
Exactly.
Right, let's start to wrap up with a couple of car buying questions. So we've had loads in, and don't forget that you can drop us an email, podcast@electrifying.com. If you want to send us an email with any of your car buying questions, or you can just drop it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or listening on YouTube. So we've had one here. It's from Rob McSorley. Rob says, have been a big fan of the channel for a while. I've recently started listening to the podcast. I'm hoping you can help me. We currently have a much loved 2009 Ford Galaxy, but it has over 170,000 miles on the clock, so we're considering changing it. Crucially, we need a 7-seater. So we've got 4 children ranging from 3 to 14 years old. Goodness me, that must be a very full fridge that you have in your house there, Rob. So having thoroughly searched the market, there's a couple of 2 options. So one is the e-Berlingo and the e-Rifter, and the other is a 2-year-old Mercedes EQB. Very different cars. Would you recommend? We can charge at home, rarely travel long distances. Don't know. Have you had a look through that, Mike? What did you think?
Well, I think it's tricky. At this stage of the market, there isn't a massive amount of choice, and he's probably shortlisted the 2 cars that we would shortlist had he not provided them with us. But I mean, you got 2 slight downsides. I mean, the EQB will feel posh compared to perhaps the Galaxy and the Citroen, so that will feel a step up market. But those back seats in an EQB, I mean, they're not big, are they? And they're very much. I would say they're occasional use. And if you've got 4 kids, then that's not occasional use, is it? You're going to be using those all the time.
From 3 to 14 years old as well.
And you wouldn't get car seats in that rear seat.
No, because they're probably not Isofix, are they?
And you're certainly not going to get, I would have thought, a 14-year-old, if your 14-year-old is anything like the size of my 14-year-old in rear seats. So, yeah, but you'd have to literally go and give it a good try and get all the family in and see if you can fit in it, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. And the sort of Citroen and the Peugeot 2 options are lovely. It's a very utilitarian car, isn't it? An e-Berlingo and the e-Rifter. I don't mind that, but if it's constantly nagging away at that you're driving a van with seats in it, but I don't know. I mean, reading down sort of towards the bottom of Rob's question as well, he said that he was also looking at a Dacia Jogger, which we wouldn't feature because it doesn't have a plug, but it is a hybrid.
I love a Dacia Jogger.
And he said that should I just run that for like 2 or 3 years, and then will there be better options? And I think you and I are probably on the same page at this, thinking how much is an EV9 going to be in 2 or 3 years' time? And I think my recommendation would be, which, I don't think it makes me a bad person, is to say those two options you've shortlisted are compromised. So therefore I would possibly definitely move it into the long grass and pick up something that's going to be better in 2 or 3 years' time. What do you think?
We've really needed electric 7-seaters that are affordable, and we're definitely not there yet, are we? I mean, I know we've moved on from the days when the only option was the Model X, which is pushing on 100,000, but the EV9 is not a cheap option. Even the Peugeot 5 E5008, it's actually a great car. That I think I've driven it. I've did the walk around, and you drove it, Nick, and we both were impressed with that. But I think, like Mike is saying, give it 3 years as all these first batch of those cars start to come off finance deals. And actually you're going to get yourself, an absolute steal in the second-hand market. And the way things are going with this thing that we talk about on almost every podcast, which is the ZEV mandate, it also means that we know dealers are registering cars. We know that's happening to try and get the figures up for manufacturers. So you may well, if you really start to get your BDIs out and really start looking at, used approved cars from brands like Kia and Peugeot, you may find a 7-seater coming on. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So I think as much as we would love to say, yes, get into electric now, I think both of those do come with a bit of a compromise.
I think what's lovely is that you are up and happy and willing to move in the right direction of moving things. A lot of people will make the jump to a hybrid before they jump to going fully electric. And I personally, I don't think fully electric is quite there for 7-seaters for you yet in terms of the budget. And I have a soft spot for the Dacia Jogger. I think it's a cracking little car. I had one for a little while when I was a few years ago before I was with Electrifying, and I really liked it. It was pretty good. And you can fully fit in 7 people. It's totally doable in that thing. Do it.
Now, we did have one more buying question, but I'm also really conscious that this podcast is called the Kilowatt Half Hour, and we're now at nearly 42 minutes.
Oh, it's one. Just do it.
Should we just do it? Sorry, just one. Okay. Michael Fields. Hi, Michael Fields. Hello, crew. Thanks for all you do. Thank you for listening and for taking time to write to us. Here's a challenge for you if you fancy a challenge. We always do. So I'll be quick. Friend, 2 new replacements. Oh, dear, that hurts. Both knees. Fiesta now too low. Good. He's hoping to switch her into a BEV. Okay, good. We like that. Fingers up. But however, size is very important. So it needs to be not much bigger than her Fiesta, which is just over 4 meters. Any valued suggestions? Remember, it's seat height we're looking at. She likes buttons and switches too. So she wants a good seat height, nothing too low because of the knee replacements. So anything off the top of your mind? Oh, Nicola's got to go on. Nick, go on.
The first car that came into my head was a Kona.
Yeah, good choice. And also we don't know budget, and we don't know whether lease, buy, new, whatever. So the Kona is a really good option for that, because there's also now, I was looking at used prices on the Kona, and there's some really good used deals around on the Kona as well at the moment.
Also, Mike is a really good person to answer this question because he is of the taller variety. I feel like you have a natural way of looking at things where maybe she needs a little bit more space, so you'll go, oh, actually, this is a car with a bit more space that may suit you better.
But before Mike speaks, sorry, Mike, I don't want to interrupt, but let's just say after 3, Nicola, what we think the car will be that he will recommend that's got a nice high ride height, a little bit taller. Should we say it together? It might 1, 2, 3.
i3. Yeah.
Would you recommend an i3, Mike?
I don't know what the other two have just said because it just the microphone dropped out. But I would recommend
oh no,
a BMW i3.
There you go, BMW i3. And on that note, on that note, you have been listening to the Kilowatt Half Hour-ish, as we're going to rename it. Thank you for joining us. Please do drop your comments and your questions into the comments below if you're listening or watching on YouTube. If you are listening on your usual streaming service, we'd like you to follow the podcast, wouldn't we, Nick? And why would we like them to do that?
We would like you to do that on wherever you listen to
because it helps podcast services recommend us.
Yes, it does.
All of
So
that.
if you rate us and you give us like a review and stuff, then it's good for the algorithm. Then more people hear about us, and then we end up in more random people's laps, and it's good for us.
Yeah.
Is that what you wanted to hear?
Kind of. Maybe in a little slightly more slicker way than that. But, I'll take what I can get at this stage of the day.
Ever the professional.
Oh, but we do like hearing from everyone, don't we, Mike? And I know you reply to loads, don't you?
I love it. In the morning before we have our sort of morning ops call, I do like to tap in a few replies to people. So we don't just sort of look at them and discard them for the podcast or anything like that. I do try desperately to answer everyone. So if you do send it to podcast@electrifying.com, I will do my best to get back to you with our pearls of wisdom.
Okay. And listen, thanks for joining us again on this week's show. We'll be back with more giddy with excitement from all of us on the next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.